Hi, I'm Stuart Adams. Welcome to your first free online session. It's great to have you here. Thank you for joining me. This is where you're going to get the opportunity to get a feel for what it's like to do some personal coaching, as well as, if you're up for it, a bit of clinical hypnosis as well. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. But just to give you the heads up, I'm going to try and make this as much of an interactive experience for you as I possibly can. Because I think there's only so much that we can learn through explanation alone. The best learning happens experientially. In fact, if you were to think about the most powerful lessons that you've ever learned throughout your whole life, looking back, what I think you'll find is that the most powerful lessons happen through your own personal experience rather than just the things that you've had explained to you by someone like a teacher. In fact, I think the most effective teachers are the ones who are able to give you more than just knowledge, but can give you the experience too. So that way you can actually practically apply that knowledge. Okay, so with that specific goal in mind now moving forward, what I'm going to do throughout this video series at certain points in time is I'm going to ask you to essentially kind of participate, to join in and play along, kind of like it's a game. It'll not only make it a lot more fun for you, obviously a lot less boring, but it's also going to help you get a lot more from it if we can make it an interactive experience. So what I mean, to give you an example, I might ask you to, say, close your eyes, think about things in a certain way. I might ask you to recall or remember particular experiences that you've had in the past. I might ask you to kind of imagine or visualize certain experiences that you could have in the future. I might ask you to consider or take on certain ideas or suggestions, some of which may previously have felt unfamiliar to you, but I'm going to ask you to give it a go just the same. Now here's the thing, you can see me on the screen right now, obviously I can't see you. No one's going to know if you don't join in. It's really up to you, but I promise you, you're going to get a lot more out of it if you do. And look, if you're going to take the time to watch through these videos anyway, you might as well participate, join in, make it as much of an interactive experience, and that way you're going to get the results that you've come here looking for. And so with that idea in mind, this is the first thing I'm going to ask you to do. I'd like you to take a moment to think about a particular experience that you've had where you really struggled with something. You know, you were really stretching yourself, putting a lot of hard work into something because you wanted to achieve a particular aim. And maybe nobody around you even really understood or recognized the struggle that you went through, but you really stretched yourself, you worked very hard, and you got a great outcome as a result. Now, when you got that great outcome, I want you to think about, how proud you felt of yourself. And specifically, I want you to think about, how did you congratulate yourself? And I don't mean, what did you do if you went down the pub and had a beer to celebrate? I don't mean your actions so much as, in the privacy of your own mind, how did you congratulate yourself? What thoughts did you think? What feelings did you allow to be there? What did you kind of communicate to yourself to say, yeah, job well done, I'm really proud of myself? Because everybody does that in their own personal ways. But I'd like you to think about, how do you do that process of congratulating yourself? And when you have a think about how you do that personally, what I'd like you to do now is congratulate yourself right now for being here. If you've come to the point where you've decided that it's the best thing to do to actually reach out and get some help from somebody, there's a good chance that that's not a decision that's come lightly. Seeking help from a therapist, a counsellor, or a coach of some sort, it's not like, going to the shops and buying some groceries. With that stuff, you just decide what you need, you go and you shop around, you compare prices, maybe you buy, you consume. It's simple, right? But when it comes to the process of actually reaching out to get some help for yourself, that's probably not a decision that's come lightly. And I'm guessing it's probably not something that you've just decided this morning and acted on straight away either. It's usually something that people kind of think about for a while. It's usually something that people kind of struggle with something for a while too, or they sort of wrestle with themselves about the idea of actually going and getting some help. So the fact that you're still here is really important. And let me explain why, because I'm going to tell you, I think, the number one mistake that most people make when they want to go about changing something. What most people do is they want these big results. They want these big changes, and that's fine. That's great to have those goals in mind. It's really important. But the mistake that we often make is we fail to recognize the reality or accept the reality that big changes are actually the consistent accumulation of all these little steps that are all put together. And it's usually the little kind of uncomfortable steps that are the most powerful ones. What I mean by that is they're the moments where you didn't have to do something, but you did it anyway. It was a bit of an uncomfortable stretch for you to do it, but you still took the initiative to do it just the same. And the mistake that most people make is they totally overlook that. And instead, they're sort of waiting until they get the big outcomes that they can kind of see with their own eyes, until they give themselves permission to reward themselves. Let me make it really clear that it's a perfectly normal and natural, healthy human desire to want to feel a sense of approval. You know, we all want people to recognize our unspoken struggles. And we want to be congratulated for our achievements as well. That's part of being a human. That's a perfectly natural thing to do. The problem, though, is when we seek that approval from the world around us too much. And what I mean by that is, you know, some people might want to have the right image, wear the right clothes, be seen with the right people, live in the right suburb. Some people may do it by getting the right comments on social media, by portraying themselves in a certain way so they'll get the likes. You know, we all do this in our own different personal ways, and there's nothing wrong with seeking approval from other people, so long as we understand the importance of and practice developing the skill of balancing that approval from the outside world with our ability to give ourselves that approval as well. And it's a very commonly overlooked yet important skill to have. So here's a really important question I'd like you to consider for a moment. When I ask you to kind of give yourself permission to congratulate yourself for being here right now, and give yourself a bit of a pat on the back for taking the first step to seek help from a counselor or a therapist, when I ask you to do that, how does that feel? Because there's a good chance that if you're like most people, you might feel a little bit weird, like a little bit unnatural, a bit awkward. Most people will respond by saying, oh geez, you know, I haven't done anything yet. I haven't done anything that's deserving of that congratulations. And if that's the way it feels, this is something that I'd like you to consider. And to demonstrate, we're going to do one of these little interactive experiences, okay? So this is what I'd like you to do next. So what I'd like you to do is to take a moment to think back to yourself at an earlier stage of life. Maybe 10, maybe even 15 or up to 20 years ago, depending on your age now, obviously. And if it helps to close your eyes to do this, that's completely up to you. Do it in whatever way that feels most comfortable. But I'd specifically like you to look for a problem, think about a problem that you used to have that you don't have anymore. A specific kind of problem where you were stuck on something because you believed at the time that you would never be able to do this particular thing, which now you're able to do. Now, it doesn't matter too much about the specific problem, only that it's something that you used to be stuck on, and now you can actually do that thing you never thought you could do. Okay? Just pick the first thing that sort of comes to mind. But this is what I'd like you to do once you've identified that problem. And again, this is probably going to help more if you go ahead and close your eyes to do this, but it's up to you. I'd like you to imagine that you could jump in a time machine and go back and visit your younger self at this particular point in life where you had that problem. The catch is your younger self is not allowed to realize that it's you. They can't know that they're speaking to their older self. Okay, so you're going to appear as a random stranger. And you get to sit down and have a conversation with your younger self, maybe a couple of hours at most. As far as they're aware, you're just some person that's there to give them a message. And what I'd like you to think about is, what could you tell them in that conversation but would help them to understand or persuade them that they actually can do that thing which they believed they couldn't. What could you say to them that would tell them what they need to hear so that they can know that they can do that thing they thought that they couldn't? Now, you can pause the video for maybe up to a minute if you want to take a moment to think about this. But once you've had to think about what you would tell them, here's the second thing I'd like you to consider. In all honesty, once your younger self hears what your now wiser self tells them, how would they respond to that? In all honesty, there's a very good chance that they would probably be at least a little bit resistant to that idea. Maybe even very resistant. But it's very unlikely that they're just going to sit there and go, oh, great, so I can do that thing after all. Oh, geez, I had no idea. Thank you, you've changed everything. I mean, they might, but there's a very good chance that because they don't know who you are and all you've got is this short amount of time to tell them what they need to hear, it might not be what they want to hear. And as a result, it might not necessarily click straight away.
Whilst it's normal to want people's approval, it's important to balance that need by learning how to give ourselves approval, praise, recognition, and congratulations. Looking for a therapist is not an easy decision, so take a moment to congratulate yourself for having the courage to take this and every additional step, especially the uncomfortable ones. Learning to do this creates momentum to put all the little steps together to create the change you've come here looking for. It may feel unusual at first, and it's normal for our mind to be resistant to change, but in the following videos, Stuart will show you some simple tricks to speed up the process by breaking through that resistance. So as long as you play along and make it an interactive experience, by the time you've worked your way through these lessons here today, some of those changes will have already started to click into place.